Hello and welcome to A Gypsy's Kiss, the vlog. I'm Shelley Carney.
And I'm Toby, and stick with us for a couple of seconds and we'll tell you what would have happened if Fenn had died on November 25th, 2010. And you're back.
And we're back. And just a reminder, this is a total supposition, and he didn't die. We don't want him to die. We don't wish any bad to happen to Fenn.
That's really true. I mean, this is purely hypothetical, and I don't want it to be offensive in any way. We hope Forrest has a long and fruitful life, surrounded by his family and his friends.
And as our friend Gail Rubin says, just because you talk about death doesn't mean you're going to die. She's right. The doyenne of death, so she should know.
We did a show with Gail, 13 episodes. What was it called?
Gosh, now I've forgotten.
And it was about death, like she's an expert at death.
The Good Goodbye.
The Good Goodbye.
It was based on her book.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We did that.
That's right.
So
today's agenda. Oh, yes. Housekeeping. I should do that with a little accent, depending on where you're at. So today we'll have a presentation followed by Q&A. Again, the Q&A is open to any types of questions that you may have. And go ahead and preface your questions with AGK : so that I make sure that I don't miss them in the chat. And moderators, Man in the Box is here. Oh, Man in the Barn, I'm sorry.
Man in the Box, nice.
Man in the Barn is here.
Thank you.
And so he's still designated as a moderator. So hooray. Hello. Thank you for joining us. Super Chat. Super Chat is available. What you can do is you click on that Super Chat button. Icon. And your name and the amount and whatever you have to say pops up to the top. And there's like a big party. And and yeah, in your honor. So if
and we'll make sure we read that question.
Absolutely, any question you have from then on is, you know, extra important because you took advantage of Super Chat. So we appreciate that, and any monies that are donated to our Super Chat fund go into our travel allowance for when we go to places like Denver or anywhere else, right?
Well, it's not like you're going to let me spend it any other way.
Toby wants to buy more microscopes. That's why. And open Q&A. I just talked about that.
Yeah, you did.
Let's get on with the presentation.
Okay, let's go back. So we've made our apologies for this.
Yeah, I thought we should have done this at Halloween because it's kind of spooky. Woo,
it is kind of spooky,
ghostly. And
so this actually was prompted by an idea I had at the beginning of the weekend. And so I also have to apologize to you because I know we had plans to do a completely different show this week. But I ended up writing a blog post on this topic, and it created a lot of traffic, not only on our blog, but in the various chat forums and on our YouTube channel. And I thought, well, we better deal with this now. While we can. We still want to, over the winter, we still do want to focus on the poem. And one of the reasons, what?
So AJ says he doesn't see the Super Chat button. And I just wanted to, he said you might want to turn it on or point out where it is, because I don't know where it is either. Sorry. Well, sorry to interrupt.
Hang on. So I'm going to have to leave for just a second.
Oh, okay. And I was trying to share today's live video with people. So if you can go ahead and share this with your friends as well while I'm doing that, then we'll all be sharing. And for some reason it's...
So the Super Chat is down at the bottom of their... Look down at the bottom and click on the dollar bill sign.
Oh, okay. Down at the bottom there's a dollar bill sign. What color is it? Yellow?
It was gray.
Gray?
In this one, but you got to click on the button and it says send a Super Chat.
Gray, and it's send a Super Chat, and it's a $sign button.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's available.
Now, for some reason, this always comes up on my screen when we go live, but it's not coming up today, so I have to just check.
The Super Chat, you mean?
This video. Okay, so it's in my subscriptions, but I didn't get a notification yet.
Oh, okay. Down
Down at the bottom, there's a dollar bill. There we go. Okay.
Are we caught up?
Almost.
Okay.
Let me share, and then go ahead and talk.
Okay. So I know I promised you guys that we were going to do a completely different show, but as I said, I wrote a blog post on this, and it kind of intrigued me because for me, it was a stopping point. It was actually the result of a conversation that I had with our friend Clayton Watson in Texas. And Clayton was talking about his search, and it struck me that he was relying on a lot of the things that came out of Forrest's various interviews and writings, etc. And so I proposed the idea: what if he had died in 2010? And it sounded a bit fiendish at the time I said it, but then I started thinking about it. I wrote the blog post, and I thought we should at least have this conversation. And as I said, we wish no ill towards Forrest or his family. We hope he lives a long and fruitful life. So let's talk about. Oh, I got to change this back.
So I'm just sharing on Facebook so everybody's aware that we're live. And
all right,
we're good. Okay.
So let's say that Forrest Fenn had died November 25th of 2010. The reason I picked that date is because the actual release of the book, The Thrill of the Chase, occurred at the Collected Works bookstore on Saturday, October 25th, 2010. And there was a book signing that night. I do not know if there was an actual, interview or conversation that went on before the book signing. The book signings that I attended late in 2012 didn't involve presentations. It involved Forrest saying a few words and then signing books. There's no record of that. I don't have a recording. No one else made a recording if it did occur. The only thing that happened that night was that a woman whose name is Charlotte Mary, who's the host of a program called Radio Cafe on Santa Fe Radio, interviewed Fenn that night. And the interview was kind of funny in the sense that it had almost nothing to do with the thrill of the chase. It had mostly to do with his various interests, from art to anthropology to archaeology, to hunting for his perspective on hunting for treasures that began as a child when he was looking for arrowheads with his father, et cetera, et cetera.
So basically, she'd done background work on him, but
up to that point,
did not have any idea what was in the book.
Right. I don't feel, based on the interview, I don't feel like she had actually read the book.
And she may not have had the opportunity because it was just being launched.
The only time it had been mentioned, I went back to the newspapers of the previous week, Santa Fe New Mexican and the Santa Fe Reporter. And what's interesting is you find a lot of material relating to Fenn's relationship with the all those treasure hunters, if you will, that had been identified by the Department of Justice, and some had been arrested. 3 of them apparently.
Oh, those dealing with ancient Indian artifacts and
exactly,
that sort of thing.
Yeah. So there was a lot of, if you go back to the newspapers at the time and look up Forrest Fenn, they spend more time talking about that than they do anything else.
Right.
Then there's articles about his business, about him being, kind of a progressive and very marketing-oriented art gallery owner. So what we would have is this interview that kind of doesn't count, done by Charlotte Mary on October 25th. And then we would have 5,000 copies of The Thrill of the Chase, because that was the first run, 5,000 copies. And they were sold out almost immediately through various forms. And then Fenn passed away on November 25th, 2010. So
Allegedly,
yeah, hypothetically. So a month later, he dies. The implication being there would have been nothing after that. And let me give you an idea of what we wouldn't have had that occurred. So we wouldn't have the dozens of interviews in print, audio, and video that Fenn has conducted since 2010. He got kind of active in 2011, but beginning at the end of 2012 and 2013, with the potential for the second book coming out, he got really, really active. We wouldn't have the collected works in October 2012 and the Moby Dickens videos in November 2012 that I shot. Those would have never happened. And for those of you familiar with the Moby Dickens video, you'll find that it is potentially, people think of it as something very informative when it comes to Fenn and his personality. We wouldn't have the book Too Far to Walk. He wouldn't have written that. We wouldn't have the benchmark map of the Rocky Mountains. As a matter of fact, the subject of the Rocky Mountains would never have come up.
Right.
Because he didn't mention
Not by him anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
And it didn't in the beginning. It didn't anyway. He wasn't the one that ever brought up the Rocky Mountains.
No,
it was other people.
Not until 2013 was if Fenn did. Even April of 2013 was the first time Fenn. I did it. I snuck it in there, didn't I? Fenn. April of 2013 was the first time Fenn mentioned the Rocky Mountains,
Yeah.
and he mentions it in a way similar, in a way similar to when he's always talking about the map. Well, the Rocky Mountains stretch all the way up out to Canada.
And somebody asked him that in a radio interview. So again, somebody else brought it up. And he's always said, well, I'm not going to tell somebody if they're doing it wrong. So if somebody says to him, well, it's in the mountains north of Santa Fe, must be in the Rocky Mountains. He's not going to say, oh, no. Especially that it was, apparently. And he agreed, yes, it's in the Rocky Mountains. And then somebody said, oh, the Rocky Mountains stretch all the way to Canada. And he said, well, yes, they do. He's not going to stand in your way if you want to go all the way to Canada.
Yeah.
But that wasn't his idea.
And we wouldn't have had any of that conversation. None of those conversations. We wouldn't have Once Upon a While.
Nope.
We wouldn't have the Collected Works bookstore November 2nd, 2017 that we shot. That wouldn't be there.
We
Not that it
wouldn't
was
have
necessarily
some of
as
these
helpful.
films like The Lure and The
Right.
Searchers, and some
Right.
of these things that are based on his search. And they did interviews with him.
We would have
and
likely
they
never
used
heard.
the Moby Dickens video within their movies.
We would have likely never heard of Michael McGarity or Douglas Preston unless you had interest in them as authors.
Right.
Maybe they would have brought something out, to help. We wouldn't know that the first clue is begin at where warm waters halt.
Right.
That came in that New Zealand radio.
Well, we would have to guess at it, right?
Yeah.
We wouldn't be confirmed.
Right.
Mhm.
And then we wouldn't have all those hints that he was throwing out there to waylay the Today Show. We wouldn't know it was above 5,000 feet, below 10,000. I put 10,000, but it should be 10,200. We wouldn't know it wasn't in Utah, Idaho, Arizona, or Nevada.
Right.
And so we would have to do that whole. Does that count as the mountains north of Santa Fe? We wouldn't know. We wouldn't know what north was, because it wasn't until afterwards in some conversation, I think with Dale, that he said north is everything from 91 degrees to 269 degrees. Or is that right? No,
I don't know.
from 91. Yeah, to
North is up.
271, 89 to 271. We would know that it's not in water. We would know it's not associated with a man-made object. We wouldn't know it's not in a graveyard. We wouldn't know all those things that came out this last year.
Right.
That it wasn't in the Rio Grande, and that the Rio Grande is not even in the Rocky Mountains, according to him.
It's not in a
et cetera, et cetera.
mine.
Yeah. So
It's not on top of a mountain.
we wouldn't know it was at least 8.25 miles north of Santa Fe.
Right.
There would be people digging up his backyard,
Still.
especially because he wasn't there.
Right.
We wouldn't know that searchers had been within 200 and 500 feet. We wouldn't know that he had taken 2 trips, totaling, carrying the 2 weights of 42 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't know that the clues are contiguous. That came out at Moby Dickens.
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't know that he wanted to have his turquoise bracelet returned, because that also came. That hadn't appeared before Moby Dickens.
Of course, if he was dead, he wouldn't need it back anyway.
So I had a list of about 100 of these.
Right.
And I wasn't going to bore everybody by going
Right.
through all the information that we would add. What we would have had is, if we had been lucky to get one of the 5,000 copies, although by that point you could find the poem online.
Sure.
So what you technically could have, is if you were fortunate to get one of the first copies that came out of Collected Works, you'd have a copy of The Thrill of the Chase. If you weren't fortunate enough to get a copy of the Thrill of the Chase, you'd have the poem on his website, and you'd have the promise of a grand adventure as long as you and your children put down your little texting machines. That's
Right.
what you'd have.
Right. And to back that up, he'll tell any new searcher, like when we had an interview with him last year in his home, we went to talk to him and he found out that I hadn't searched yet. I was just getting into it. And he made sure to tell me, you need to read the book and study the poem. And that was it. He didn't give me any additional clues that he had given everybody else. He didn't fill me in on all this other stuff that had happened in the interim. He only said, read the book, study the poem.
I did think it was interesting on that visit that he kept suggesting to you that you should look at the webcam for
Oh, he did it once.
Old Faithful and
And he did it for your benefit.
You think?
Yes.
Just to distract
Just
me?
to mess with you.
So there wouldn't be any blogs or forums. There wouldn't be any DaleNeitzel.com with cheat sheets, his video interviews with Forrest, multiple video interviews over years and years, and there would be no 200 scrapbooks. There would be likely be no ChaseChat.com because you'd have to get those 5,000 searchers to cooperate. There would be no mysterious writings and with the 6 annual questions asked to Forrest Fenn. And Gypsy's Kiss would still be talking, well, by this time we'd be talking about
Boating on a budget and microscope photography.
Yeah. Macro and micro
Whatever your
photography,
latest
whatever my latest
hobby
phase
is.
was. Yeah. So, so Gypsies, you wouldn't be seeing us, Shelley and I and Gypsy's Kiss. We still might be doing film work for all I know, you know.
Who knows?
Who knows? So we wouldn't have any of that. We wouldn't have all those additional resources that we've had over the years that Fenn has shared with us and then enabled us to use those as a mechanism for creating what I refer to as the Fenn treasure mythology. If Fenn had passed away on November 25th, the mythology would be relatively limited to Forrest's past, his interests in things like art, geology, not so much geology, art, anthropology, archaeology, and ancient Native American artifacts. That's what you would have to go on. And the myths associated with the hunting of that treasure would be based on that. What Fenn did from basically January 1st, 2011 to the present is add content that enhanced the mythology of that treasure. And we do it to ourselves. If you go to any of the forums and you watch the conversation as it expands from, hey, you guys, I think I know where warm waters halt, track that, follow that line of conversation to its end. And by the end of that conversation, there is speculation that somehow the combination of the interaction between the sun, the moon, and the earth somehow has an impact on the rise of the tide. It's, you know, it just gets progressively more mythological. And I think the problem with our treasure hunt is that there's a lot of mythology that has its basis in what was said after October 25th, 2010. And I think that mythology has distracted us from where the treasure is and where it could be found. So the bottom line, and this is not fact, this is opinion. Fenn wrote The Thrill of the Chase believing it was his final work. No expectation that there would be 2 follow-on books, Too Far to Walk and Once Upon a While. He gave us the poem, a picture of the treasure, and a promise of a great adventure, as long as we were willing to accept the challenge.
Right, and the book.
And the book.
His final work, the book.
Yeah, the book.
Which was some of his life story that he chose, pieces that he chose specifically for that book.
The point, the inflection point at which the mythology changed was his agreement to do the Today Show. Because that took those 5,000 books and that one little promise that he made in those books and turned it into a national project.
Right.
Right? Mm-hmm. It expanded from the 5,000 people.
Actually, worldwide.
Well, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
The 5,000 people that had purchased the book into the rest of the world.
Right.
And I think in addition to underestimating the impact of what he was doing, I think by the third one where he goes like, I don't think this is going to happen anymore. I think he realized what was happening. You know, he started to recognize the impact of what he was doing on the Today Show. And so he underestimated that. And then I think he underestimated the power of the little texting machines on social networks, because that's what brought out all the people that were going to engage on the forums and engage in conversations on Facebook.
And Reddit.
And yeah, exactly. And Reddit.
And YouTube channels.
Everything after that, everything after October 25th, 2010 is marketing. An expansion of a strategic expansion of the mythology based on a set of tactics that were right up Fenn's alley when it came to marketing. And don't get me wrong, it was very valuable to us, to the world, that we got 2 additional publications from him in that time. But his objective at that point, realizing that he had opened a Pandora's box of mythology, was to add to that mythology, to enhance that mythology. So what do I have in the way of recommendations? I have this, and I'm going to leave it at this. Entia non sunt multiplicanda, praeter necessitatem. And that's your puzzle for today. You'll have to figure out what that is and what it means, but that's my advice to you. And we're going to go back and take the same advice for ourselves.
Yay.
Yeah.
It's always a struggle, isn't it?
Well, it is for me, simply because it's constantly running through my head. I mean, I lose sleep.
Well, you're constantly reading the mythology.
Yeah.
I'm like on the fringes of it, and I'm just like waiting for you to tell me stuff. And then I keep saying, but the treasure's in New Mexico.
And you have to keep reminding me of that.
But why are we spending money going there if the treasure's in New Mexico? So. Okay.
I haven't been to Denver in a long time.
Yeah.
So next week, you know what? I'm not going to make you a promise, because I keep finding things of interest in between the time I promise you something and the time we get to the show where we actually talk about that thing. So here's what I can promise you. I'm going to do a little Fenn. I promise you that we'll have a great show next week, that we're going to have an interesting topic, that there's a 60% probability it will have something to do with a poem, because we're going to spend some time this winter focusing on the poem and breaking it down progressively further, reverse engineering it where we can, and seeing if there's anything as a group of people we can get out of it. So I'm not going to necessarily make a promise as of next week. Mm-hmm. We look forward to the conversation next week, because it's the day before we head out to Denver. Mm-hmm. And we think that's going to be a lot of fun. If nothing else, it's Denver.
I'll play Douglas Preston. So are there going to be clues next week?
Yeah. No, they're not. And the week after that, we'll tell you about the trip for Denver, and we'll post all our images and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So that's all I got.
Okay. Yeah. That was fun. So what do you think? If Fenn had passed away right after the book was published, would we have enough information to go on? How many of us would have stuck with it for as long as we have, if that's all we had to go on was just the book and the poem? Has the additional marketing, hints, clues, scrapbooks, extra books that came out, has that prolonged the search for you? And of course, continued to have it be in the public realm, so that new searchers who are now just joining us are coming on? And would that have happened if there hadn't been any further materials after The Thrill of the Chase? So what do you think about that?
The mythology of marketing, the marketing mythology.
Marketing mythology. And I'll be a little sacrilegious and say, what if the stories of Jesus had not come out? We wouldn't know who he was. What would you do about that?
If you didn't know who exists, so that you can base Christianity.
I mean, the Bible almost didn't get printed several times, and then there were times when the Congress of Popes and Cardinals got together and decided, what are we going to put into the Bible?
Sit back this evening and ask yourself, where would I be with my solution if all I had was the thrill of the chase? And what would I do about it? if literally I ignored everything else, did what Fenn has always said to do, read the book, read the poem a dozen times, and then go back and read the book again? That's been his recommendation consistently since the first time he started promoting the idea of the thrill of the chase. So sit down for a couple of minutes tonight and think to yourself, what if that is all I had?
Yeah.
Any
Without adding the but don't put any buts on there.
Yeah, and because that's what we have a tendency to do.
Right.
One of the folks, I don't know who it is, but shared this thought on my blog post on Reddit, and there's a whole column of conversation that goes on that is mostly all about the buts. Well, he could have died, but you know this, and but we would have had to do this, and but there is no buts. He died November 25th, 2010. There's no buts after that.
Right. There's speculation from other people. Like,
it's mythology.
You know.
And you can and what's even worse is there's enough that was created after 2010. Not only is it a generic, generally owned mythology, you end up creating your own mythology. So one of the questions you have to ask yourself is, how much of your solution is based on your own mythology? If all you had was the poem, and all you had was the book, I'm going to discount, although I like her a lot, Charlotte Mary's interview, because it had nothing to do with the thrill of the chase. If that's all you had, plus some articles that were written about Fenn prior to 2010 that dealt with his interaction with the Department of Justice and his success as an art dealer in Santa Fe. If that was all you had, where would your mythology be? So, okay, now I'm done.
I think we'd be back in New Mexico. The mountains somewhere north of Santa Fe.
The mountains somewhere north of Santa Fe.
Because that's what's there.
Yeah.
That's all that's there. So, hooray. All right, let's get started on our questions and stuff.
Do we have Q&A? Do we have questions?
We have let's see. Okay, so Jazz Winners answered our question with, I never would have seen the beautiful New Mexico and all of its treasures if not for, I guess, the mythology. Joey Perro says, thank you for giving so much to the thrill of the chase.
You're welcome. We enjoy it. We hope you enjoyed we hope you enjoy listening to it, watching it as much as we enjoy producing it.
Yeah. Jazz Winners, did originally Forrest say it was only in north of Santa Fe and not mention anything of the Rocky Mountains?
So let's go back to our hypothesis that the only thing you'd have is the thrill of the chase. In the thrill of the chase, there's a sentence that precedes his description of the treasure, and he says, I hid it someplace in the mountains north of Santa Fe. That's all he says. That's all you would have. The first time he mentioned the Rocky Mountains in any way related to the treasure was in April of 2013 in an interview, and by that time he knew he was going to be publishing Too Far to Walk, which included the benchmark map. So there was no mention of the Rocky Mountains prior to April of 2013 by Forrest Fenn.
All right, and Matt says, he came in 20 minutes late and wants to know, if Fenn had the book written to be published, like Salinger's books, in a vault. So I guess if he would have put other things in a vault to be released.
So he claims that he wrote the book. He started writing the book in April, I think mid-April of 2010. It was published. The publishing actually took place around August of 2010. It was delivered to the market in October of 2010. There is no indication that he had a vault of books prepared to be published. Every time he's described it, it sounds like he says, I had so much fun with the first one, I decided to write another. And in this most recent one, Once Upon a While, it really sounded like, had a bunch of scrapbooks that he'd already written, and he put them together in a book. And I think some of Too Far to Walk and Once Upon a While were the result of him wanting to make contributions to, in the case of Too Far to Walk, all the proceeds and the profits go to his grandchildren, and in the case of Once Upon a While, the proceeds and profits go to Susan and Lou and
Jessica.
So I don't think there were things in his vault. What would have happened after that? The question one has to ask is, would they have been published? Would Shiloh or one of his other family members have decided to publish them? That's a question we don't know the answer to. I certainly don't know the answer to.
Well, you have to consider that Fenn had asked Preston back in the 90s to write the book for him. He was looking for a different author to write his biography. He didn't want to do an autobiography until he had just kind of forced himself, as he talked about, going to the bookstore and reading the other books and then finding the J.D. Salinger book and then saying, I can do this, and talking himself into doing it. Then that was his first foray into that type of literature. Before that, he had been writing books that he researched about art and artifacts and archaeology. Those were the types of things he was writing up until The Thrill of the Chase.
And I think you're right. I think he didn't do it because he didn't believe that he could do it. So that's why he was looking for another author. And at some point, for whatever reason, I'd be interested to hear what stimulated him to some kind of action, and that was, finally hiding the treasure and deciding that it had to be part of this book. So I think a lot of things came together in 2009, 2010 that would have caused him to do that. And honestly, every time you hear a conversation between he and Douglas Preston and Michael McGarity and other of his very close friends, what's her name? The woman that was ex-CIA. I always forget her name. But they always say, oh, he's a great writer. He has a very conversational tone, and he has great stories to tell.
They're very supportive.
And I think, yeah, exactly. And I think when you hear that often enough from people that you trust, some of whom happen to be writers who have made a living at writing.
And on the New York Times bestseller lists. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
You start saying, well, maybe I can do this.
Right.
And so he did. And why not? He has lots of stories to tell.
Sure.
And he tells them well. So.
Let's see. I have one. Okay, so Seven Blade. Even though your solve is in New Mexico, are you guys still going to do some searching when you go to Denver? We're going to be searching inside the museum where it's warm.
So if you're talking about searching for the treasure, no, we believe it's in New Mexico. The reason we're going to the Denver Museum is my perception that there might be a hint for us in the museum that substantiates our solution of it being in New Mexico. The museum has quite its own history. Fenn has a bit of history with the museum. So I just wondered if I wanted to find out if there's anything there in the same way that I want to find out if there's anything in the it isn't a museum, it's an exhibit at Northern Arizona University.
Oh, well, and the reason that Toby had come up with this was because he had seen something that just sparked an idea at another museum in Florida. So, of course, why not go to this museum and see if you spark any more ideas? And that's what it's mostly about.
Yeah, if you go back to my blog post on the object that I found at the Frost Museum, the stick map. It really was it was interesting because finding that stick map at the Frost Museum in Miami stimulated the idea. Well, maybe there's something I'm missing. The stick map in and of itself gave me a new perspective on the how the clues in the poem are written. So I thought, well, maybe there's something I can find in the museum in Denver that might have a similar impact on our thinking. So, but we still think it's in New Mexico.
And Jimmy Fast has translated this to entities should not be multiplied beyond necessity.
Beyond their necessity.
Good job, right. Jimmy.
It's William of Ockham. It's referred to as Occam's razor. And the last time, the time that I heard it put so well and understandably was what's her name? The film Contact with Jodie Foster. She says that she doesn't use keep it simple, stupid, but the entities you shouldn't. The simplest solution is always the best one.
Right, and it usually is.
Yeah,
absolutely. And Seven Blade just wanted to say that he found out about Occam last week in a TV show, so it spoke to him, and he Googled it, and he's just like, wow, this is all coming together now. Mm-hmm. So, Man in the Barn. I think the book and the poem will get you to the exact location. I highly doubt it would have taken off like it has. So I think he's just making comments on our speculation and agreeing with us that everything's in the book.
Yeah, there would certainly be a smaller number of searchers because they would be limited to that first edition of Too Far to Walk, which was The Thrill of the Chase, which was only 5,000 copies, and they went pretty quickly. So we'd have a very small number of searchers in comparison to what we have now.
But then he adds that the scrapbooks were on Old Santa Fe Trading Company.com, and he thinks they can provide a real treasure map.
So the question is, the scrapbooks were placed on Old Santa Fe Trading Company.com, because I do not believe that they were put there before October of 2010. I thought they were put there after October of 2010.
And we don't know.
I don't know. I hadn't. I'll have to check it out just to make sure.
Okay.
If somebody knows the answer to the question, maybe they could pose it when they were actually placed onto.
Because he did have the website, the Old Santa Fe.
He did, at the insistence of his web manager, who said, if you're going to publish this book, then you need a website to go along with it.
This book or other books before it?
Well, I mean, The Thrill of the Chase. So this goes back all to The Thrill of the Chase, where they suggested to him, if you're going to go ahead and do this, you're going to start publishing books like this, you need a credible website. Mm-hmm. And he tried to keep it up for a while. It was kept up for a little while. Mm-hmm. If you go back and look at it, most of the material on there is pretty old.
Okay. So we don't know when the website, the Old Santa Fe Trail.com went up. So that's something that we can look into. Mm-hmm. Amy Camo. I have a bit of a strange, maybe silly question. Let's see. Do you think he may have booby-trapped the chest in any way because of Indiana Jones mythologies?
No. I think he's invited families to go look for the treasure, take their children with them. That's why we believe it's not hanging off a cliff. You don't have to be hanging off cliffs or swimming across wide.
If you saw him with children, you'd see that he has the attitude of a teacher. He loves children. He loves to teach them. He loves to talk with them. He loves to listen to them and learn about their lives. And that, I think, brings him back to his own youth. And you can see his face just light up when he's talking with children. So there's no way he would put children in danger on
By
purpose.
putting some sort of booby trap
in any way.
Family adventure.
And that's all the questions I have for today.
Yay! All right, we're going to close.
I think our notification didn't go out yet, so we may have some people who are going to tune in late or not see this until it's already up on YouTube. If you have questions or answers, please post them in the comments, and we'd love to have those included with this video. Anytime you see one of our videos, please feel free to comment on it and, provide extra information. Like if you have the answer to when the website went up for Santa Fe Trading Company
were published on the website.
Or any type of information, or especially if you have citations, dates, and things that you can point to, that's always very helpful because that research is important to answering these questions.
Good. Okay.
All right.
That's all I got. No more questions.
And Amy says, thanks and keep up the good work. Thank you. So next week we're going to be back for sure at the same time. We're not quite sure what the topic will be, but we will always have the conversation afterwards open to all of our viewers. So hope you'll come back for that. Anything else?
That's it.
All right. Thank you so much for watching today and for all of your comments and questions. For Gypsy's Kiss, the vlog, I'm Shelley Carney.
And I'm Toby Eunice. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.